What's going on, YouTube? Culturedog Sam Hatch back here with some more videos, and I finally did it. This is something I've been dragging my heels on for quite some time. I finally got around to checking out Stranger Things Season 1 and Season 2. So I figured, I'd kind of go over these. There's not a lot of special features, or any, except for some packaging special features, but I've been meaning to pick these up for a while. I don't have the 4Ks. I think I'm actually going to pull the trigger, but if you haven't seen these, Target somehow got the exclusivity rights to release Netflix's Stranger Things on Blu-ray and DVD, and they released it in some amazing faux VHS packaging, and they have Blu-ray and DVD combos, which are these, and then they upped the ante on the second season and went full-on clamshell, faux clamshell. But then there's also 4K Blu-ray combos, and these particularly are usually on sale for ridiculously cheap. Sometimes you can get this for like $5 or something. $10 is not unheard of for either of these. So, I mean, the fact that they're pretty bare bones, is a factor. But if you're a fan of the show, or if you're intrigued to check it out, really, you can't go wrong. This was a show that I was told by a ton of people immediately that I needed to see. And being someone who didn't have Netflix at the time and wasn't interested, I'd cut the cable cord and wasn't interested in dropping more coin on repeatable expenses. And I had, Prime and enough stuff like that. I was like, well, if they come out on Blu-ray, I'll pick them up. And I did. I kind of dutifully went out and picked it up. But enough people told me I would like it, that I in particular needed to see this show. So I went out and grabbed those. But it was one of those things that, I had them, and I don't know, just life moved on, and I always meant to get around to watching them. And then I knew I had to do some reviews on Netflix shows, so I had to invest in it for a short period of time, and I realized season 3 was coming out. I'm like, I better get on the stick and finally check this show out. I was on the fence. It's like I wanted to love it and I wanted to hate it at the same time, because I heard, for every person that told me I needed to see it, it was amazing, and it captures everything about the 80s, it captures the music of John Carpenter, and then I'd have somebody else on my other shoulder telling me that it's hipster garbage, it's just cashing in on a bunch of crap nobody knows about, and it's a waste of your time, etc. And I'm sort of sensitive to that sort of stuff. I'm on the fence with a lot of vaporwave, chill wave, ass wave, taco wave, whatever you want to call it. Mostly because a lot of the kind of 80s celebratory stuff I'm seeing now is this weird situation where artists are cherry picking particularly exciting moments or styles of the 80s and repackaging it in a way much like if you would think aliens came from the future and retro engineered the 80s. The same thing George Lucas said, how the Cantina Band was how an alien race would interpret like a Benny Goodman track or something like that. That's what I'm hearing in a lot of this stuff, and I'm hearing not 80s, but some sort of weird bastard mutation that doesn't remind me or give me any nostalgia. It sounds like very modern music that young people think 80s music sounded like, and it very rarely sounds like actual 80s music. So that whole kind of explosion of 80s nostalgia made me wary of things that are also in a film medium, giving some sort of homage or celebration, because there are some things that tend to do the same thing. If you're gonna have any kind of time travel or something like that, a lot of times people will just go for they'll cherry pick again those amazing moments, and time and space will be bent and destroyed and mutilated in the process just so they can do it. They cherry pick these amazing highlights, and it doesn't represent the reality of the 80s at all. So that's kind of what I was expecting. And it's hilarious because people do it with the 70s too. Anytime anything is set in the 70s, everyone kind of throws out most of the decade so they can set it in 1977 and fit in Star Wars. If they do it properly, sometimes people will set it in the early 70s and still reference Star Wars and get it wrong. So One, I was impressed that this show was set in 1983. So again, you got some Star Wars in its history and its present, because not too long after Return of the Jedi came out. But I was immediately struck by the reality of this world. And if you're the one person that hasn't seen Stranger Things, it is a loving homage to just about everything 80s nerd culture. And it's about this group of kids that are Dungeons and Dragons enthusiasts, and they live in a small town in Indiana named Hawkins, and they encounter almost like a D&D module come to life with a creepy government laboratory that's secretly housing all sorts of MK Ultra type psychic experiments, and then also a kind of Lovecraftian gateway to another realm and all sorts of stuff like that. So yeah, what if this stuff that these kids are play acting at suddenly becomes real in their own suburban environment? So again, it's pretty compelling stuff. It's not too far off from what J.J. Abrams did with his 80s love letter to Steven Spielberg films, Super 8, which I also loved and was also immediately connecting to this was my childhood. There's so many moments of that it got right. And this one too, again, I was immediately struck by the reality of these kids' world, and there's this interesting feel to the early 80s in which the 70s and the 80s rolled over into one another. And there was this, they actually talk about, different universes, like a multiverse in this, where there's those sections where they meet. And that was the early 80s, where there was a lot of 70s fashion that hadn't died down, etc. And it wasn't until a little bit later that the 80s that we know as a marketed new wave entity really took hold. And this got it right. Like there was furniture that had been handed down from previous generations. It just felt lived in, and it felt honest, and I was actually surprised. So that at first grabbed me. And then the story of these kids, it's the story of these 4 kids: Mike, who's the kind of de facto leader, played by Finn Wolfhard, and Dustin, who's the kind of goofy one, played by Gaten Matarazzo. Lucas, who's a little more, he's like the Rambo type. He's a little bit more of a warrior, and he's prone to putting on headbands. And then Will, who's the kind of more sensitive. He's the one that kind of takes things to heart a little bit more. And they, go on these Dungeons and Dragons adventures and spend far too much time doing it. And you get to learn a little bit more about their families, more so in the second season than the first one. And Will ends up going missing in a situation related to this creepy laboratory and some of the creatures that may have escaped from it. Matthew Modine is sinisterly effective as the head of this project going on at this military base, but it's just firing on all thrusters pretty quickly. And David Harbour's great in it as a small town sheriff, Hopper, who is connected, has a little bit of a connection to Will's mom, Joyce, portrayed by Winona Ryder, and he's one of the few people that might be capable of solving this mystery, because the mystery gets weird and a lot of people aren't really prepared for the strange kind of corridors it goes down. Other people are involved are Mike's older sister and her friends. So there's a teen romance, high school romance situation going on in the midst of this. Really just capably handled, and just smart writing. And again, I was just knocked out by it. One, the verisimilitude of it, its attention to detail, little elements of things I'm like, oh, I recognize that from my house or my friend's house. And things that aren't necessarily important to the story. But that was the other thing I like too, is there's tons of obviously pop culture references, and this thing's neat too, because it's not stealing from any one thing. And it's the Duffer Brothers, who created this show, are a bit Quentin Tarantinoid, in which they're creating this collage out of other pieces of pop culture, and largely Steven Spielberg movies and Stephen King stories. but like with a dash of everything else that as a youth in the 80s I grew up watching and loving. But they do it with a sense of story and with great characters so that it's not distracting, at least not for me. There was never it wasn't as much of, what people complained about Ready Player One, of the, oh, I recognize that factor. If it's in there, it might be just like a quick glimpse of something or a quick nod. And there's a fun kind of frisson of, oh, I recognize it, I remember that, or a cool little bit burst of nostalgia. But it doesn't detract from the story. And the story is always engaging. It's quick. The first episode's 8 episodes. The first season's 8 episodes. The second is 9, so a little bit more expansive. But yeah, I heard a lot of people talking trash about the second season, and I enjoyed that as well. It expands the characters a little bit more, which is very natural. It's hard not to, as a person my age and of my nerd stature, to connect with this, and it's not really a unique experience because so many people have shared similar early 80s experiences, but it feels personal. Strangely, people would pair up in groups of 4, and I most certainly had the party. I had my version of the party of this show. It was myself, my friend Jason, my friend Karsten, my friend Ryan. Sadly, we didn't all make it out alive from our adventures. But that experience has me, tapped into these characters even more, because maybe these characters are in danger. But yeah, I still clearly remember the day. I had met three of us had met in kindergarten. And I remember the day one of our friends, much like in the show, had another friend that lived across the street from him or right near him. And he was in a different class in kindergarten or whatever, and we kind of were called to the summit outside in the schoolyard, and he's like, yeah, this is my friend Karsten. He's from Denmark. He's weird. He's into Smurfs and Legos and stuff. He's your new friend. And we're like, all right, cool. And like the forming of the party happened, and it was like a thing. And season 2 admirably shows how that party does keep kind of evolving. People move in from other states and areas, and in that one, they had Billy and Max, who are some characters that come in from California. Again, very organic. And yeah, when these characters aren't trying to find their missing friend, they're also dealing with the sudden appearance of a young girl named 11 who has escaped from this government facility and might have some kind of telekinetic gifts of her own, very fire startery going on there. And yeah, them just kind of navigating through youth and dealing with bullies and all sorts of nonsense growing up, and then having this kind of Lovecraftian nonsense over it. Again, I totally tapped into that stuff. My friend Ryan and I used to always just troll around his neighborhood, and there was a industrial complex that just spawned overnight near his house, and we came up with this mythology about it, how it was this secret front for this government complex that was performing all sorts of strange experiments, and there was this Lovecraftian scenario in which it was spawning these strange creatures. And yeah, I mean, one of the last letters I got from him even referenced, don't forget the devil rabbits or whatever from the company. We even tied it in with the company Beatrice. I don't know if you remember, in the 80s they were marketing like sugar substitutes or whatever, and they were just suddenly behind everything. And so that they were our version of the power company in this show that was supplying with their Beatrice trucks of nonsense. They were ferrying all sorts of nefarious doodads and equipment back and forth. So yeah, I mean, this was my world. And again, we role played like crazy, though not so much Dungeons and Dragons, more so Star Frontiers, another TSR game, and a few others, and later Call of Cthulhu, of course. But yeah, easily tapped into the show. And I love how the Duffer Brothers are smart enough to withhold certain elements of the town. And that there's like these key moments anybody else would have all squeezed in. They would have all blown their load. and squeezed everything 80s, all the kind of pop cultural touchstones and landmarks. They would have squeezed it all into season 1 and then left nothing later. So I have to give them credit for their remarkable restraint in withholding elements for future seasons. And season 2 brings out the arcade. Like, how do you have a show about nerds in the 80s and not have the arcade? But it's not a part of season 1. And then that sent my mind reeling, like, what's he holding back? What's going to be in future seasons? And sure enough, yeah, season 3 unveiled some other stuff. So I got to give them credit for that, because, you know, you think anybody else would have just thrown everything 80s at the wall and let it stick. There's some cool character arcs, and particularly Steve, who's the very Stephen King-esque school bully who transforms and goes on this strange journey that keeps on unfolding in different, more interesting ways as the series progresses. Unlike a lot of people, I didn't have problems with the second season at all. I think it was a nice little kind of counterpoint to the first, because again, it's like crazy infernal events happening in the small town. So, you know, it's going to happen again. But it happened again and bigger and a little bit more personal in the second. So it was, you know, enhancing certain things. It was doing some new things with the characters' personal arcs, so that was cool. And I love the finale in particular. It was amazing. So it really felt like it wrapped things up. They could have ended it after season 2, but I'm glad they didn't. But I was into it. So, and I think they kind of found their footing after season 1 was successful enough. They settled in, and everything was a little more organic. The only thing I was initially a little, you know, wary of was the music, because again, it's in the realm of the 80s throwback vaporwave stuff that, like, It Follows. I found the music extremely distracting in that. It's not that it wasn't interesting. It's just that I didn't think it melded with the action on the screen. It was about as subtle as a guy with a megaphone going, 80s music! 80s music is happening right now! And it's 80s! And there were some moments in the first series where I'm like, I'm hearing loud 80s music, not because it matches the scenery, but because it's cool and synthy. But that got better as it went, and it seemed like they really started figuring it out in season 2. And then by the time season 3 rolled around, a little bit of a precursor here, nothing distracted me at all, really. So I was impressed. And of course, the soundtrack of classic 80s tunes was very cleverly picked. And of course, the cynical viewer myself, at first, I was trying to catch them out. Like, yeah, I'm like, that Bengals song wasn't released until 1987, but the music we're hearing isn't always diegetic. It's not always sourced from what these characters, the world they're living in. Sometimes it's just because it's good sounding music. There's a really cool cover of Heroes done by Peter Gabriel, the Moby song. What the heck was it? Like, when it's is it When It's Cold I Want to Die? Whatever. But it's really a sad ass song. I used to listen to that song all the time back in the day and just like moop. But yeah, so it's got a great soundtrack. It's really not much to complain about. So I'm glad I finally got around to seeing it. And everybody that told me I was going to love it, yeah, they were right. I did. And I immediately jumped right from season 1 to season 2. But the packaging here is cool. Yeah, it's got this, you know, faux worn vibe to it. And of course the fake sticker, yeah, Stranger Things, looks like it was resold for $3. And it's just got a slip cover, and on the inside it's actual, you know, faux VHS tape, though obviously not quite the right size of a VHS tape. And it's got this cool kind of magnetic flap that flips open, and of course it's got a Be Kind rewind. And then on the inside there's a little poster and a Friends Don't Lie sticky note. That's not really a sticky note. And then just simply two Blu-ray discs on. I hate those little foam hubs, but yeah, you get what you pay for. And then the DVDs are on the inside, and there's a little bit of a bonus feature there. So yeah, pretty cool packaging. It would have been even cooler if they had released a VHS tape version. much like the VHS film series. But yeah, kudos to them. And it even says, VHS Hi-Fi on the side, which is funny because you think like somebody would, get mad when they pick this up and they're like, there's no tape in here. They really upped their game for season 2 with the gorgeous faux clamshell. And, of course, it's got a cool Hawkins video sticker on here. And on the back, it's got cute things like don't expose the spores, don't play in the upside down. This one's got a couple of pictures, just random like behind the scenes pictures. And again, the tape, faux tape inside the tray, and then the same kind of thing. This time it's got 3 discs because one episode too long to fit on 2. And then 3 DVDs as well. And then, of course, picture of Hopper crawling around in there. The video quality on both was stellar. Very natural, and I just appreciated the natural look of the show. There's a lot of stuff that happens out in daylight and just scenes that are naturally lit, and that just feels refreshing to see something that's not completely lathered in aggressive filters and orange and teal and that sort of thing. So yeah, it felt very fitting for a show that takes place in the 80s, there, before that kind of really aggressive color timing happened. But again, there's nothing very video looking about it. There's not a lot of edge enhancement or anything like that. It's just clean lines and everything like that. So very stunning. I haven't even seen these in 4K yet, but I was really impressed with the Blu-ray quality. There are some dark scenes and some creepy woods and everything, but I wasn't noticing any macro blocking or any major problems in the dark scenes. I had heard a lot of people complaining about playback problems on season 1, notably with Xboxing. I don't have an Xbox, but I did have some stuttering playback problems on, I think, 2 separate episodes. So I have yet to try this on a different player to see if I can replicate it. So I'm torn between either just getting a replacement copy, because you can get these things dirt cheap, or just I'm going to get the 4K probably anyways, and that comes with another set of Blu-rays, so I might just do that instead. So I'm not sure if that's something that's going to be replicatable on different players, but on season 2, I had 0 playback problems the whole time. It was fine. And sound-wise, these suckers are really intense. It's got DTS HD Master Audio 5.1, obviously, and Dolby Digital 5.1 on the DVD copies. There's also Spanish 5.1, English and Spanish subtitles, and all region. Again, they're cheap, but there's no special features, no commentary tracks. It would have been pretty cool to have, like, maybe say Beyond Stranger Things, the Netflix show with the Jim Rash and the cast and crew talking about it, a la Talking Dead, etc. It would have been pretty cool to have that thrown on season 2, but you don't get much of anything. So I definitely recommend, if you're into the show, like just more than a casual viewer, to pick up the behind the scenes book counterpart and seek out Beyond Stranger Things on Netflix. But yeah, you get what you pay for, at least, and it's really, really good. But yeah, the sound quality was killer. The DTS HD Master Audio was very tasty. A lot of deep bass, obviously, with the monsters come cruising around. A lot of discrete sound effects in the surrounds, and of course, the 80s music gets ripping. I was super psyched that Oingo Boingo made the cut of season 2, episode 1. One of my all-time favorite bands. Saw them twice in the 80s, and yeah, loved it. So yeah, I wanted to be cynical. I wanted to kind of stand tough and be like, no, the show's not legit. It doesn't get the 80s right, but no, it does. It really captured the vibe of what it was like being a kid at that time, and particularly a nerdy kid, and the kind of cohesive friend support group and everything they go through was definitely spot on. So yeah, kudos to the Duffer Brothers. So Sean Levy also getting involved in some of their, Andrew Stanton doing some directing. Looks great, sounds great, and yeah, I'm looking forward to season 3 hitting, seeing what they're going to do packaging wise with that. When I get the 4Ks, I'll show you those too. They're really cool. But anyways, I just wanted to finally do a little quick Blu-ray review of those suckers, because they've been sitting on my shelf for far too long. So cheers, thanks for hanging out, everybody. Bye.